Oh, it's another day here at the Comeback Team Studios. This is your host, Bek Lover, and you're watching Interesting Times, a news podcast where I gather all the interesting stories, anything that I think might be important for the world that we live in that you need to know, my friends, because sometimes reality is stranger than fiction. I'm going to cover headlines from all over the world today and interesting stories, human stories, anything that I just think is interesting, guys. And there's so many interesting stories. So you don't have to scroll through all the news. I gather everything, I compact it, and I give you my crazy take on the world that we live in. So make sure you hit the subscribe button. Check out all the other content on my channel. There's tons of content. Over 100 interviews with some of the most influential people in the world. I continue to do my weekly podcast, the Bek Lover Podcast. Stay tuned, available on all podcast platforms. You can watch these episodes on YouTube, Rumble, and Spotify. But make sure you check out my Instagram also, because I post a ton of content on there and X. With that said, let's get to it, my friends. Let's start today. So, there's a lot going on. Interesting times. Interesting times indeed, my friends. I'm reporting live from New York City today. It's going to be 70 degrees, the warmest day so far this year. It's looking like it's going to be absolutely gorgeous. So I'm going to finish this episode early and get out there and enjoy the day. So it's going to be a marvelous day here in New York City as far as the weather is concerned. But there's a lot of headlines breaking, and I want to make sure I cover them. Everyone's split down the middle with all these migrants, illegal aliens, whatever you want to call them, crossing the border. And everyone thinks that there's no consequences to just allowing all these undocumented, unscreened people into our country. Not only that, in New York City, we're spending about $380 per person per day, feeding them, clothing them, giving them a place to live. Now, it does sound like the right thing to do as a human being. But why don't we just send them that money, which goes a lot further, and they can stay in their own country and not bring these diseases with them? The TikTok ban is one step closer to happening. We're going to cover some of that nonsense today. And Denmark is getting ready to draft women into their military. But there's a lot more I want to talk to you about today. Some really cool stories, so make sure you stay tuned and check out entire episode. So, my friends, let's start with the first headline that we just mentioned. TikTok. The U.S. House passes the bill to force ByteDance to divest TikTok or face a ban. This is reported by Reuters. Washington, March 13th, the U.S. House of Representatives overwhelmingly passed a bill on Wednesday that would give TikTok's Chinese owner, ByteDance, about 6 months to divest the U.S. assets of the short video app or face a ban, in the greatest threat to the app since the Trump administration. The bill passed 352 to 65 in a bipartisan vote, but it faces a more uncertain path in the Senate, where some favor a different approach to regulating foreign-owned apps posing security concerns. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, who's been in office forever. Okay, this guy gave the commencement speech at my college. I went to Pace University in 2004. He was old back then. 20 years later, this guy's still in power. And you guys think that one guy is going to come in for 4 years and weed out anyone that's not doing the right thing for our country when these people have been in power for 30, 40, 50 years. No one president can fix this problem. For those of you that think that Trump will come back in his glory and descend from the clouds like Jesus Christ and save America and make it great again, when you have people like Chuck Schumer that have been in power for 30, 40 years. That's the root of the problem in our country. It's the Congress and the Senate. They've been in power forever. They feel untouchable. They can do whatever they want. They get away with basically anything they want. They make rules, laws, they trade on it, them, their friends, their family, and they don't give a crap about any of us. They'll tell you to mask up, and you saw what they did over the last few years. Forget all the other topics, right? They got you fueled up on things like abortion and this and that. Meanwhile, they don't give a shit about any of those topics. They just want to use it to rile you up so you vote for them. In my opinion. Back to TikTok. This is a critical national security issue. TikTok is the biggest threat to the United States of America. It wasn't allowing China into the World Trade Organization with their slave wages, slave labor, like the Uyghurs that have been in prison for years. Everyone seems to have forgot about them. It's not that we allowed our trade secrets to go. We had tons and tons of their spies working in our highest level corporations like Microsoft and other companies, stealing their technology. It just happened a couple weeks ago. Stealing their AI technology and giving it right to China. Or our companies that were not penalized for doing business over there, while the American worker got shafted. As we grew up as children, we saw everything saying made in US, and now it all says made in China. They weren't worried about any of that. They're just worried about TikTok now, an app where most of us act like fucking idiots and dance around. That's what they're worried about. They weren't worried about the most important stuff, military tech, AI tech, all of our jobs, everything being outsourced to China, where the American businessman and woman cannot compete with those labor rates because they pay their people shit. Okay? No tariffs imposed to protect American products. And America got gutted right underneath our eyes for the last 30 to 40 years. They weren't worried about this. They're worried about TikTok. They're worried about us going like this and dancing. This is the security threat. It wasn't everything else that we've allowed to happen for the last 40, 50 years on both sides of the aisle, Republican and Democrat, that they put their self-interest above protecting the American worker, the American economy. It's why the car industry went all over the place. And Detroit became a ghetto, basically. And all these other inner cities went to hell because we stopped making things. But they're worried about, if I dance on TikTok, it's a security threat. This is what they're worried about. It's a joke. It's an insult to anyone that has a brain that's been paying attention for the last 30 years. So kids, if you love your TikTok and you want to save it, say, where were you guys when Bill Clinton allowed the World Trade Organization to allow China to bring its below minimum wage, slave labor wages into the world labor pool? When they took away your future, not the Chinese fault, the American politicians that were in power over the last 30, 40 years. But they're worried about you guys going, This is what they're worried about. It's a joke for anyone that has a brain and has a memory longer than a day, which is why you should watch this show. I will remind you of things that have happened over the last 20, 30 years because I've been alive, kids. So hit the subscribe button and stay tuned. When you watch Interesting Times with Bek Lover, you learn things about life. China says the TikTok ban would come back to bite the U.S. China, this is reported by the BBC, has warned that a proposed ban on TikTok would come back to bite the U.S. as lawmakers approved a bill that could lead the app to being banned. The bill in the House of Representatives would force the Chinese-owned app to sever ties with China or become unavailable in the U.S. On Wednesday, the bill passed with bipartisan support from both sides of the political spectrum in the House, officially known as Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversary-Controlled Applications Act. It now heads to the Senate, where it is unclear if it has enough to support to pass. If it does, the White House said that President Joe Biden will sign it into law. This kind of bullying behavior that cannot win in fair competition disrupts companies' normal business activity, damages the confidence of international investors in the investment environment, and damages the normal international economic and trade order, Mr. Wang said. The move was similarly pillared by Chinese media, with several newspapers featuring satirical cartoons ridiculing the U.S. effort to ban the app. It is a joke, because we've already been compromised by China for the last 30, 40 years, thanks to you clowns. And now they want to act like China. China, oh my God, they have an app that makes people go like this. It's a joke. It's a joke. What China could probably do to us is a lot more serious than what we can do to them at this point in time. I'm pretty sure China could just say, we're not going to send you guys nothing no more. We don't make nothing no more, Americans. We're at the mercy of the global markets. We were the ones that made everything for the world, pretty much, for a very long time. It's how we became a superpower. We don't make nothing anymore compared to what we used to. But they're worried about TikTok. Denmark, reported by The Guardian, plans to conscript women for military service for the first time. Prime Minister says government wants full equality between sexes as it plans to call up 5,000 conscripts a year from 2026. You know something? Bravo, Denmark. Bravo. I think we need to draft women in the United States and all these Western countries also. You want to be equal, right? You claim that you're not equal. You're not paid the same as men, supposedly. They've done studies on this stuff. I say they should be drafted all. If there's ever a war where we need more people to sign up and they're of age, I think we should draft all the women, since most of us have become cowards in this country and we don't stand up for anything that makes any sense anymore. We become the laughingstock of the world. I think we should draft women. I think if we go to war all over the world, I think they should be the first ones drafted. Since they want to be equal, let's let them prove themselves. As a matter of fact, I think we should have an all-female battalion, and they should be the first ones to hit the beaches of the future Normandies in World War III if it ever comes our way. And let's see how effective they are against an all-male battalion. I wonder who would win if they were armed the same. Drop a comment. Do you think an all-female battalion could outtake an all-male battalion in physical war combat? If they had the same weapons, who would win, the women or the men? Now, there is a component of brains to warfare. It would be very interesting to see. But what do you think? Physically, would the women stand a chance if it was an all-women battalion against an all-male battalion? I think most people would probably bet that it would not be. Although you never know. Drop a comment. Denmark, women, you don't want to get drafted into the military. You shouldn't go to Denmark. We do not rearm because we want war. We are rearming because we want to avoid it, said the Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen. The government, she said, wanted full equality between the sexes and to extend the length of military service from 4 to 11 months. I love it. You want to be equal? You think we're not equal? See, I believe men and women are different, created by God differently. They have different gifts, different responsibilities, different stuff. And I'm not talking about conforming to traditional thinking and a woman belongs in the kitchen. I'm just talking about simple scientific facts that women have a different anatomy than men do. We have different chemicals that dominate us, estrogen and testosterone. And I just believe that there are some gifts that women get that men don't, and vice versa. A man will never know what it's like. Yes, that's right. A man, I don't care what you called yourself or what you were born, a genetic man will never know what it is like to give birth to a child and to nurture them in the womb. They will never have that bond with their child. Only a mother has that. Women can have multiple orgasms. Men can have one or two, but it's not as good as that. And there's certain things that God did for both sexes that's different, in my opinion. But since we want to tell the one that designed us that he doesn't know what he's talking about, I think we should draft the shit out of women. I would love it. What do you think? Drop a comment. 300 people potentially exposed to measles at Sacramento Hospital. This is becoming a new trend right now all over the U.S. And guess why, guys? Migrants coming across. We pretty much eradicated measles in this country. So they had an outbreak. 300 people were exposed. I wonder where it's coming from. A CDC team joins the response to 8 measles cases in a Chicago shelter for migrants. This is reported by the Associated Press. So from Sacramento to Chicago, they have shipped these people everywhere. I'm pretty sure a lot of them are carrying TB, tuberculosis. I can't even say that word properly. And all kinds of other diseases that could be harmful. Maybe even smallpox. A guy last week died in Arizona of the plague. Yeah, the one that wiped out half of Europe, fleas. So I just find it funny that people act like there's no consequences when you allow large influxes of undocumented and unscreened people into our nation. Besides the fact we could have some type of extremely violent act happen. We have people from all over the world. They have government agencies, intelligence agencies that might use this window to come through our southern border, which has been open for years under this administration, unchecked, ship them all over the country. We probably have sleeper cells all over the damn country. That's the truth, let alone the measles. So I hope all of you that think that there's no consequences to this, you remember this cast. And for those of you that think the way Bek Lover does, I love you. Fears of human catching avian flu heighten as virus spreads to mammals, quite likely. This is in the New York Post today. Fears that humans may someday catch avian flu have heightened as the virus has been contracted by mammals. 3 states, Washington, Montana, and Kentucky, have reported cases of bird flu in mammals so far this year. Washington reported 3 striped skunks have the virus, while Montana found it in a mountain lion, and Kentucky had a raccoon. The virus is already widespread among wild birds and is especially poultry for decades, with more than 82 million animals currently affected across 48 states. Basically, they fear if this spreads, this might be the next one that they were talking about. You know, the WHO, they said disease X. Seems like this might be the disease X, the crossover from birds to mammals, from mammals to human beings of the avian flu, which can be pretty deadly. So, this has already killed 600,000 wild birds and 50,000 mammals in Argentina, Chile, and Peru alone. This virus has caused U.S. egg prices to surge as California's massive poultry industry has been struck. It seems like everything and everyone that makes food is having problems this day. From the cattle in Texas, I'm sure it's all by accident. I'm sure there's no nefarious agenda. I'm pretty sure this is all happening by accident. The CDC, reported by dailymail.com, CDC issues warning against nasal rinsing with tap water after 10 patients contracted deadly brain-eating amoeba. 3 of the 6 people died of chronic brain infection that kills 90% of victims. Unsanitary tap water used to rinse nasal passages introduced amoeba to brains. The CDC has issued a warning against using tap water for nasal rinsing after investigating a spat of cases in which the practice led to deadly brain infections. Officials at the agency looked at 10 patients who contracted the deadly amoeba and Canthamoeba. I think I said that right. A single-cell organism that can spread to the brain and it kills its victims. 3 of these people died of the infection linked to their tap water. Okay, so you got to be careful if you like to use those pots. What are they called? Spetty pops or ketty pot? I can't even say. I forgot what they're called. But the thing that this lady has, she's putting in her nose. For those of you that can watch me. UK governments has changed their definition of extremism. Boring article. We'll skip that. Japan's same-sex marriage bar is unconstitutional. High Court says. Reuters. Japan's bar on same-sex marriage is unconstitutional. The High Court in the northern city of Sapporo said on Thursday, the first such ruling by an appeals court on a matter that has divided the lower levels of the judiciary. Japan is the only group of 7 nations without legal protection for same-sex unions. Although backed by 70% of the public, they are opposed by the conservative liberal Democratic Party of Prime Minister Fumio Kishida. You have to add that to the end, emphasis. Japanese civil code rules that limit marriage to those of the opposite sex are unconstitutional and discriminatory, the Sapporo High Court said in its ruling, but dismissed the plaintiff's claim for damages from the government. Enacting same-sex marriage does not seem to cause disadvantages or harmful effects, the court said. I thought the ruling might be a conservative one, but it ended up exceeding my expectations. One plaintiff who did not disclose his name told reporters after the ruling, I couldn't help but cry. So that's one step closer for them getting their rights. And the LGBTQ, whatever they've added since the last time, gets their rights in Japan. Devastation in Gaza as Israel wages war on Hamas. Israel intends to move 1.4 million displaced Palestinians from Gaza's southern city of Rafah to humanitarian enclaves before a planned military assault there. So basically, humanitarian enclaves, concentration camps, right? A concentration camp is when you put tons of the same people into enclaves. Israeli forces have killed at least 433 Palestinians in the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem, since October 7th. Keep in mind, the West Bank has nothing to do with what happened on October 7th. The Palestinian Health Ministry in Ramallah said the death toll is much higher than in 2022, when 171 Palestinians were killed in the West Bank. Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah vowed to continue to fight against Israel, claiming the Israeli military has been secretive about its losses in the north. Senior White House officials are planning to meet with Arab, Muslim, and Palestinian American community leaders in Chicago today as President Joe Biden grapples with the anger and concern in the U.S. about the Israel-Hamas war. Now, let me tell you, every single day in New York City, there are protests against Israel's actions in Gaza. It just seems to be growing, and it seems like the left is against the current administration with their undivided support of Israel and, unfortunately, a level of collateral damage, if you want to call it that, is unacceptable to most people, regardless if they're left, right, black, white. It's just appalling to see in today's day and age in real time. Stock up on food and water and fuel ahead of the eclipse, emergency officials warn. This is reported by iflscience.com. In Ohio, has issued a warning to eclipse watchers and locals to the path of totality, right? That's the total path where there will be total darkness because the sun will be blocked out by the moon, and fuel ahead of the total eclipse on April 8th. That means we're less than a couple of weeks away here, folks. The last total solar eclipse over the U.S. was pretty spectacular. As anyone who saw it will attest, looking at the photos, it's hard to imagine how the sight could have been improved upon in the eclipse taking place next month. But if we are lucky and weather is fine, we could be in for something special as the eclipse coincides with the solar maximum. In 2017, the sun was nearing a solar minimum. Viewers of the total eclipse could see the breathtaking corona, but since the sun was quiet, streamers flowing into the solar atmosphere were restricted to just the equatorial regions of the star. The sun is more magnetically symmetrical during solar minimum, causing the simpler appearance. During the 2024 eclipse, the sun will be in or near solar maximum when the magnetic field is more like a tangled hairball. Streamers will likely be visible throughout the corona. In addition to that, viewers will also have a better chance to see prominences, which appear as bright pink curls or loops coming off the sun. The eclipse should be visible from Mexico to Canada. The path of totality is the area where people will see a total solar eclipse, is wider than it was in 2017, and the moon is closer to the Earth due to where it is in orbit, meaning more people will see the sun's corona. Now, if this would have been during the times of the Aztecs and the Mayans, they'd have lined up like 10,000 people on top of those temples and started chopping their heads off, 100%. So if you live in those areas, be lucky today that they don't exist anymore. You'd probably be sacrificed to the total eclipse. Related companies unveils renderings of a massive $12 billion New York City casino complex at the Hudson Yards region, New York Post reports. Wynn Resorts unveiled art renderings for a massive $12 billion complex the casino giant hopes to build on Hudson Yards, a former graveyard for trains on the West Side Highway of Manhattan. The ambitious proposal created by real estate giant related companies features an 80-story tower overlooking the Hudson River that houses a gaming facility and hotel. Office buildings, apartment towers, and a spacious 5.6-acre park would surround the gleaming casino skyscraper. Tourists walking along the High Line and elevated train line converted to a public park would wander directly past the site and could even enter the massive resort between West 30th and 33rd Streets and 11th and 12th Avenue. So, the project also includes a 750-seat public school, a community facility, and a daycare center. Would provide 35,000 union construction jobs and 5,000 permanent careers. And many people wonder why New York City does not have its own casino. Yeah, we have one in Queens. It's only slots, but will they approve this? They probably will. It's just going to take some briefcases under the table. That's all it's going to take. The state is considering awarding up to 3 casino licenses in the downstate region, including New York City, Long Island, and northern suburbs. The winning bidders would have to pay at least $500 million license fee for the privilege to run a casino. Cost $12 billion to develop this. Do I think it would help with tourism in New York? Yes. Also getting rid of all the crime, people that are here illegally, stop allowing this influx of people that are not documented, so we don't get measles outbreaks. That'll probably help us more than the casino. You know, like keeping people in jail so we don't need the National Guard in the subway. I bet you if we did that, it would increase our tourism to which it was record-breaking before everything got shut down by the politicians for a glorified flu that was mishandled, mismanaged, and some would even say, God knows what else. But I bet you if we could restore the order that we had before all of this started, tourism would fluctuate back to New York, businesses would do it, and this would help New York City a lot more than a $12 billion casino, which is nothing but a way for people to degenerate their lives and usually affect the poorest of our people the worst because they have hopes of maybe with these last few dollars I have, I'll get lucky because I don't have money anyway. It hurts the poor way more than the rich. Putin set to sweep to fifth term as Russians head to the polls. CNN, the guy's a dictator. His only opponent that had any steam died mysteriously, just buried a couple weeks ago. This guy's not going anywhere. Jimmy Barbecue Sherizeh, the former cop turned gang leader, bringing Haiti to its knees, independent reports. Haiti's Prime Minister Ariel Henry said he was resigning. He wasn't resigning. He was pushed out. He wasn't even allowed to come back into the country. I like how you excuse that word, like I'm resigning. No, they told you can't come back. And they got control of the airport, everything. They run that shit. This guy, Barbecue, runs shit. You didn't run shit because you can even go back to your own country. You didn't resign. You got pushed out, my friend. You were exiled by your own people. Heavily armed gangs have tried to seize control of Haiti's main international airport, exchanging gunfire with police and soldiers in the latest attack on key government sites. An explosion of violence has taken place in the country, including a mass escape from the country's prisons. Jimmy Barbecue Sherizeh, a former elite police officer who now runs a gang federation, has claimed responsibility for the surge in attacks. Here's him in a great picture with his kid, looking like a nice human being. You got to love propaganda, man. The question is, what if he's not bad, man? What if he's just tired of the way Haiti's been run by these prime ministers who don't even have the cowardice to go back? How do me and you really know if this guy's that bad? Because a newspaper tells us? I'm not saying he's good. But how do we really know? If you're Haitian, drop a comment, man. What's your opinion on this guy? Is this guy good? Is he bad? What's going on? What's the word on the street? Interesting articles now here on out, and then we're going to wrap this episode up. 3,300-year-old tablet from mysterious Hittite, I always say this wrong, Hittite empire describes catastrophic invasion of 4 cities. 3,300-year-old clay tablet from central Turkey describes a catastrophic foreign invasion of the Hittite Empire, a mysterious Bronze Age state. The invasion took place during the Hittite Civil War, apparently in an effort to aid one of the warring factions, according to a translation of the tablet's cuneiform text. The palm-sized tablet was found in May 2023 by Kimayoshi Matsumura, an archaeologist at the Japanese Institute of Anatolian Archaeology. This is reported by Yahoo.com, Yahoo Life. So they found this, one of the really, really old writings, very interesting. You can check that article out. Storm carrying massive gorilla hail hits parts of Kansas and Missouri. If you could look at the pictures of this, they're literally the size of grapefruits. Could you imagine that hitting your house, your car, your windshield, your head? Massive chunks of hail pelted parts of Kansas and Missouri on Wednesday night, reported by Yahoo News, bringing traffic to a standstill along Interstate 70 as storms unleashed possible tornadoes, and meteorologists urged residents to stay indoors. There were 3 unconfirmed reports of tornadoes in Wabanesi and Shawnee counties with reports of damaged structures, but no reports of injuries or homes damaged. There were reports of 4-inch hail, nearly softball size, in the town of Waubonsee, and 3-inch hail near Geary County, near Junction City. Description of the hail ranged from the size of golf balls and apples to softballs and baseballs. Gorilla hail is a term coined by Reed Timmer, a storm chaser who calls himself an extreme meteorologist. Sanowski said, in this case, the term might fit. Some hail from north-central Kansas into north-central Missouri could be as big as a baseball. When you get up to the tennis ball, baseball size, or God forbid, softball size, that can do tremendous amount of damage. And if you get hit in the head, that could be fatal. So imagine, man, that's crazy. Huge hill. Paul Alexander, who lived in an iron lung for 70 years, dies at 78 after contracting COVID-19. People.com. This man became famous because he's been literally living in an iron lung for over 70 years. An iron lung was something that created to help the people that contracted polio breathe. It would basically a mechanical lung that you go inside of, and it would regulate your breathing so you could stay alive. This poor bastard laid on his back inside of this machine for 70 years. Me personally, I mean, consciousness is a gift, and I do have friends that are basically paralyzed from the neck down. I'm glad that he lived as long as he did and got to smile still through all of that suffering, man. To be stuck like that is just horrible. My heart and my condolences go out to his friends, family, and all that cared about him. Massachusetts to pardon hundreds of thousands with marijuana charges. The Massachusetts governor, reported by The Guardian, Maura Healey, announced plans to pardon all simple marijuana possession charges for the state, which could affect hundreds of thousands of who have faced charges. We believe this is the most sweeping cannabis pardon announced by any governor in the U.S. The reason we do this is simple. Justice requires it, Healey said at a press conference on Wednesday. Though the state does not have an exact number of how many people the pardon will affect, Healey said it could be hundreds of thousands in Massachusetts. So, that's some good news if you live up in Boston. They shipped it up to Boston. And I think I'm going to cap it with this. Actually, I got a couple more stories. Rancher faces prison for trying to breed absolute unit of sheep. Up in Montana, basically make the story short, this guy wasn't happy that he was just breeding regular sheep so people can buy the sheep and then shoot them for hunting. You know? He decided to import some very exotic shit from places like Kazakhstan and try to breed these sheep and create a new version of sheep that people can then shoot the shit out of just for hunting purposes. But he violated all these, like, you know, treaties and trade and like safety concerns. And so he got arrested. He's in trouble for trying to be a mad scientist of sheep from different countries all around the world. NPR reports a simple blood test can detect colorectal cancer. The results of clinical trial published Wednesday show that blood-based screening tests detect 83% of people with colorectal cancer. I don't know what the hell that means. If the FDA approves it, the blood test would be another screening tool to detect the cancer at an early stage. But even if the blood test is approved, it will not replace the dreaded colonoscopy. That's when they put a camera up your asshole to make sure you don't have cancer in your asshole. If the test is positive, the next step will be a colonoscopy. That's because a colonoscopy can detect precancerous lesions called polyps. And when you find those, you can also remove them, which in turn prevents the cancer from forming. So they got to put a camera up your ass either way. Did I have it up my ass? I had it down my throat. I don't think I ever had a camera up my ass, but I'm getting close to the age where I had the camera they put down the esophagus, but I never had the camera up my ass yet. 42 years old, maybe it's time to get the finger too. Prostate exam. Not looking forward to it. Last article of the day. Dutch anti-Islam populist Geert Wilders abandons prime minister bid. I can only be prime minister if all parties in the coalition support. That was not the case. He wrote on X, formerly known as Twitter. You know, ever since he changed the name, Elon Musk, from Twitter to X, it's become annoying because everyone's putting formerly known as Twitter. Like, it's annoying. Geert Wilders was an asshole who fueled a lot of Islamophobia. He's a piece of shit, in my opinion, who made some films that are just absolutely inflammatory and really created a lot of division in his own country and fueled racism and Islamophobia. And I'm glad he didn't win, and I hope I never have to see his ugly ass face again in the news. And I want to thank you for listening to this episode. More headlines to come. Make sure you check out all the new content. And this show is basically daily, folks. And I hope that you have enjoyed your time listening to Interesting Times. Interesting Times with Bek Lover. I'll see you next time with all the important news, headlines, and interesting stories like the ones you just heard. Make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Love you. Bye.